And you know, it's also been really fascinating too, Mick, is the way the people on the left have been protesting and losing their minds over this. I saw Pete Hegseth and J.D. Vance, you mentioned before, they were down in D.C., downtown D.C., Union Station. They were met with a bit of hostility. Have a look at this.
This is the guy who thinks people don't deserve law and order in their own community.
So we're going to ignore these stupid white hippies that all need to go home and take a nap because they're all over 90 years old, and we're going to get back to the business of protecting the American people.
So they had J.D. Vance, Stephen Miller, all of them, and it's a new muscular kind of Republicanism, isn't it? They're not apologizing and they're not mincing their words. They're actually having a bit of fun with these hecklers.
Well, what is there to apologize for? If you're there to try and clean up a city to make it safe for the residents, what would you ever be apologizing for? Keep in mind the people that are protesting, you didn't get a chance to see them, I don't think, in those clips. I have seen them in a couple other clips, are mostly older, to Stephen Miller's point, but they're mostly rich and white. There's been some tremendous media coverage outside of the mainstream media going into some of the less affluent, more African-American communities in Washington, D.C., and there are many of those where people are actually quietly very positive about what Donald Trump is doing because he's making their communities safer. My guess is that many of those protesters drove back into Maryland or Virginia to their rich white enclave suburbs that don't have a crime issue in the first place and are sleeping very safely tonight in their beds.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. That's the hypocrisy of it all. But, Mick, I also need to talk to you about this fascinating report in the New York Times, of all places. I know we give the Times a bit of stick on this program, but this is a great little report they've done here on the Democrat Party hemorrhaging voters in voter registration figures. Of the 30 states that track voter registration by political party, Democrats lost ground, the Times reported, to Republicans in every single one of these states between 2020 and 24, and they've also found that Gen Z men are really going hard for Republicans, and that blacks and Latinos, that the organizers, the community organizers, say you can't just sign them up and assume they're going to be Democrats anymore. Is this an existential crisis for the Democrats coming up here?
I don't know if it's an existential crisis. They're certainly in the wilderness right now. They don't know what they stand for. You know, they used to stand for LGBTQ plus whatever. They used to stand for a bunch of things that got rejected in the last election. So now they don't know what they stand for. They know what they stand against. They're against Donald Trump. They're very quick to tell you they're not Donald Trump. They're different than Donald Trump. They don't really tell you what they're for, but they will tell you what they're against. And, you know, with Trump's approval rating hovering around, in the upper 40s, and folks still feeling fairly good about the economy. Yes, we're a little bit worried about inflation and so forth. But generally speaking, folks are not as upset with Donald Trump as the left told them they would be if he won. And that's a problem in politics. Overpromising and underdelivering is a major problem. And when you tell people, if you vote for Donald Trump, the world is going to end, it's going to be a fascist dictatorship, there's never going to be more elections, and it turns out that's not the case, and it's not the case, then the people who are delivering that message are going to be looked at with a good deal of scrutiny because you can't believe what they say on anything else either. So the Democrats are really lost. What they need right now is a message. They haven't got it. They need a messenger. They think it's Gavin Newsom, but they're not sure. That could be different by next week. But the Democrats are going through what a lot of parties do when they lose an election. We went through this in 2012. We came out of it. It remains to see where my Democrat friends do.
Mick Mulvaney, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your insights.